Hello everyone, my name is Graphical and welcome to part 2 of my adaptation of Halo Combat Evolved, translated to film. I won't waste your time with a full recap. All I'll say is, if you haven't, check out part 1 and come right back here. We left off with the introduction of Thel Vadami, the Arbiter, as I was explaining why implementing him into the story is advantageous for the sense of personal conflict between the film's portrayal of protagonist and antagonist. I recognise that there is still some conflict in Halo Combat Evolved already, with 343 Guilty Spark, but he only becomes a villain in the game once his ulterior motive is revealed and the true purpose of the Halo array is demystified. Not to mention he only appears much later in the video game. Given this, I still want to capture and sustain the sense of wonder and caution in Halo 1 that comes from the suspicious nature and demeanour of 343 Guilty Spark from the moment Master Chief meets him. The way you never know what the robot is thinking is effective, as it constantly keeps you wondering if he is on your side or not. But you, Master Chief, nevertheless trust him as a means to an end. My focus going forward is to introduce more conflict into the story, which should in turn treat the film with more things to happen in general, to keep the pace going and deliver momentum. I'd like to point out that I know Master Chief does clash with Zuka Zamamimi in extended canon, who appears to be an elite Master Chief clashes with after evading Reach, but I'm omitting that dynamic from the plot to hone in on the conflict between Chief and Arbiter in order to make their chemistry, history and eventual camaraderie layered and resonant going forward. I need to do that and ensure I do not compromise the part 343 Guilty Spark has played in the game's story. My addition of the Arbiter will have a ripple effect on the story going forward, so let's see where this goes. Also, important side note, I'm going to refer to Thel as the Arbiter, despite him not helming that mantle at this point in the story. I'm doing so for simplicity's sake, as it would appear not as many people know the Arbiter's previous name as you might think. So, we know Captain Keyes was captured by the Covenant in the game, but now since we are using the Arbiter, we have some tools to work with here, and some forgery to undertake. The Arbiter arrives inside the Pillar of Autumn with his backup of other elites. After meticulously searching the entire ship, we jump cut to him discovering the way to the bridge and the control room. The Arbiter breaches through, and is welcomed by suppressive fire from Keyes with a UNSC standard SMG. Keyes manages to neutralise a few inconsequential grunts and jackals before he is subdued by the Arbiter. The Arbiter demands access to the Pillar of Autumn's neural AI that contains an archive of UNSC intelligence, aka Cortana. Captain Keyes denies him access and tells him Cortana isn't here with a smirk on his face. The Arbiter asks where she is. Keyes wouldn't tell him even if he did know. He would deign to let the Covenant know the coordinates to Earth and glass it like they did to Reach. The Arbiter mocks him in saying that the fall of Earth is inevitable, just like the fall of Reach was. He tells Keyes he can delay the inevitable all he likes. The Arbiter then captures Keyes, as he knows that he knows the coordinates to Earth, because how couldn't he? It's among the last colonies humanity has left. The Arbiter scornfully points out. The Arbiter brutalises Captain Keyes, forcing him onto his Phantom. Then the Arbiter sets course for the Covenant ship, Truth and Reconciliation, with Keyes as his prisoner. At this point in time, we cut to an establishing shot of a deep valley engraved into the crust of Halo's surface. In the valley resides a forest periphery that surrounds a tall, hyper-futuristic looking structure. This structure is a Forerunner beam emitter, exactly like the one you defend waves of Covenant in the video game. The beam emitter shoots an uncertain turquoise beam of energy up into the centre of the ring. At the base of this structure, several Marines are positioned on the ground, using the cover the elevated platform provides. Some of them are injured and having bandages dressed on them by medical officers. A Marine is scouting the area for hostiles in the forest and the edges of the cliffs. The group of survivors is led by Sergeant Johnson. Johnson orders the Marines to keep their eyes peeled. The humans are insulting the Covenant just by breathing Halo's air. From afar, we observe the valley surrounded by the dense forest and rigid cliffs. Then, a figure seeps into the foreground. It's a jackal, wielding a beam rifle. The Jackal stealthily aims its sight and locks onto its target, Sergeant Johnson. Johnson is blissfully unaware of the hidden Jackal in position. The vibe goes quiet, foreboding. The situation is about to turn dire. An invisible elite leaps at Johnson before it is shot with a beam rifle from the distance. Johnson is fraught. He turns to the dead elite on the ground, then turns back to where the shot came from. Master Chief is now holding the beam rifle, with the Jackal it belonged to, behind him, eliminated. Johnson smirks at the sight of Master Chief in the distance. Johnson yells, "Get tactical, Marines!" What follows is a firefight with Chief, Johnson, and the Marines facing off against a battalion of Covenant forces, deployed from a multitude of Phantom dropships. This battle of attrition makes it clear that Sergeant Johnson absolutely would not have survived the encounter were it not for the arrival of Chief. Chief takes down the vast majority of the Covenant, fending them off from the injured Marines. This scene will cement the notion that there is a lot of weight on Master Chief's shoulders, even for his stature. The battle comes to an end with the humans having prevailed thanks to Master Chief. The Marines show their gratitude and admiration towards him for saving them, which only overwhelms Chief in his internal struggle of responsibility. The Marines lick their wounds afflicted upon them in battle. Johnson operates a radio to call for backup, and Master Chief takes a breather and sits on a rock. He takes in his environment. He watches the Marines. He sees the terrain and the overarching halo curving over their heads. At which point Cortana chimes in on his train of thought, as if her neural connection with Chief allows her to read his very thoughts, feelings, ideologies and inhibitions. Cortana tells Chief it was always supposed to be him. Chief is perturbed by that ambiguous notion. Cortana elaborates. Among all the candidates for the Spartan 2 program, she saw something in him. Something no one else had but John. Luck. Chief denies that whilst looking at all the Marines. He says he doesn't consider this luck. Cortana queries back. A burden? Chief simply says, duty. He then questions how Cortana knows anything about him or the Spartan program. Cortana proclaims that, for all intents and purposes, she is Dr. Halsey. Her AI construct and memory archive is a replica of Dr. Halsey to a T, in order to preserve her UNSC intelligence and perception in the event of her death. Cortana tells Chief that if he actually saw her embodiment, he'd be the wiser. Chief replies that he'll just have to take her word on that. To which Cortana says, "Are you sure?" Suddenly, Chief's mind and consciousness is transported into a binary simulated void, a digitized landscape of nothingness, save for Master Chief and Cortana. If you recall, in Halo 4, Chief and Cortana converse in this simulation at the end of the game. The reason I am using the simulation for this scene is that I will use it as a pigeonhole to show, not tell, some relevant backstory to 117, mainly the nature of the harsh experiments he was a part of, the tampering with nature that was under the jurisdiction of no one but Dr. Halsey and her neurosis, her obsession with force and evolution to be amplified in the human body. Chief questions what the simulation is as he inspects Cortana's appearance. She reassures him that it's merely a simulation, and he can exit just by thinking. Cortana says that Halsey made the construct to mirror herself, to remind everyone that she was the one who pioneered the Spartan program in the event of her potential demise. Chief says, "Her demise? I thought you were her." Cortana humorously gets confused and says she tries not to think about it too much to refrain from an existential crisis. Chief asks if she remembers what she did to the other children during the early stages of the program. Cortana remorsefully admits she remembers everything. During this discourse concerning the grim origins of the Spartan program, we see children being taken away from their homes, then being replaced by clones in secret. Clones that die within 2 days, leaving only trauma for the parents, followed by imagery of dozens and dozens of failed biological enhancing tests, resulting in the deaths of adolescent subjects. These holographic visual cues serve as the background behind Chief and Cortana, Cortana reminisces about the botched clones that replaced the stolen children in their youth to be subjects in the Spartan program, when the operation was still considered as clandestine. She remembers all the casualties of the malpractice of superhuman biological augmentation, and the brave cadets lost along the way. As she refers to the dark past, we get visual representations as the backdrop. After a moment of silence, Master Chief bitterly utters, "A means to an end." Cortana echoes it, "A means to an end," to finish the fight against the Covenant. Then, Chief comes back to reality. Sergeant Johnson beckons Chief. He tells them they have backup on the way. A UNSC Pelican lands a Warthog at their feet, a militarized 4x4 vehicle. Forehammer, a female pilot, emerges from the Warthog and tells Chief that she saw a Phantom leave in the Pillar of Autumn with Captain Keyes as a prisoner. Cortana says they must rescue Keyes before he yields to the torture and gives them the coordinates to Earth, or dies with his stubborn honour. Johnson suggests hauling ass over to the Truth and Reconciliation with the Pelican. Master Chief says they will see us coming in a Pelican. It's better to take the Warthog there and gain entry with a low profile. Forehammer says Master Chief is right, and that she takes it as an honour to meet someone who speaks her language. Common sense. Johnson gives Chief a UNSC sniper rifle to replace his beam rifle, and tells him to represent. The sniper rifle makes up for its weight in its caliber, and that the weight doesn't seem like it's going to be a problem for Master Chief. Johnson rounds up the rest of the Marines, then the squad drives off in Warhogs in search for Truth and Reconciliation. We return to the Arbiter on board Truth and Reconciliation with his prisoner, Captain Keyes. Keyes is restrained with a plasma-powered anti-gravity machine that is locking his body in place. The Arbiter demands to know the coordinates to Earth, so that the heretics can get what is due to them. Keyes reminds him he is asking an honourable captain of the UNSC to put all of humanity in jeopardy. It's gonna take far more than this to get it out of him, and if the interrogation and torture ends in his death, then so be it. He will never let what happened to Reach happen to Earth. He warns the Arbiter not to get on the wrong side of him. He could order the destruction of this relic that he worships so curiously. The Arbiter flinches and utters that the Halo rings are sacred. Keyes tells him, as was Reach, and all the life on it. The Arbiter murmurs, extinction is merciful when done fast. Keyes goes Ashen at that uncertain remark. Keyes says, "What is life if it is lived by those words?" The Arbiter scowls at him. Keyes insults him by saying his loyalty to the Covenant is unfounded, based on blind religion and envy for their ancestral connection with the Forerunners. Keyes would sooner die than yield to the malice of false prophets. The Arbiter musters his next words with fury. He tells Keyes his screams in anguish will tell him otherwise. The Arbiter ignites his energy sword and edges it closer to Keyes' face. He grazes him in the naked face, singeing away his skin layer by layer, pore by pore. Keyes grumbles and whimpers, resisting the pain. The Arbiter reaffirms his question. Where is Earth, heretic? At night, Master Chief leads a squad of Marines stealthily across a cliffside path, leading to the Covenant ship. The Truth and Reconciliation poises above, as Sentry forces guard the gravitational lift that grants one entry to the ship. The Arbiter is told by another elite, a lieutenant, a rank known as Zealots, that their ship is being attacked by UNSC. The Arbiter is referred to by his current rank, Shipmaster. He orders Keyes to be thrown in a shield cell. Keyes asks him why he is breaking such a sweat. Keyes wittily but suspiciously suggests that they are weak in numbers because most of the Covenant are busy doing something elsewhere on the Halo, finding something. He is trying to decipher what the Covenant are really up to, and why the Halo is important to them in actuality. Captain Keyes is then imprisoned in a shield cell. The Arbiter makes his way through the ship, and then orders the deployment of hunters. Beneath Truth and Reconciliation, in the chaos of a firefight between Chief, Marines, and a battalion of Covenant infantry, they skirmish for access to the gravitational lift. This action set piece will be similar to the encounter in the video game. After the humans have defeated the initial wave of safeguarding units, Master Chief approaches the lift. Master Chief has a bad feeling. That seemed way too easy. Sure enough, 2 hunters descend down the lift with the Arbiter, and this is where Master Chief will meet the Arbiter. This is the beginning of the conflict that puts them at odds with each other. The conflict that integrates the friction between them in Halo 2, and what creates the terms and circumstances for their eventual camaraderie in Halo 3. The Arbiter descends to the ground accompanied by the 2 hunters who are following their supreme commander, Thel 'Vadamee. Master Chief comments on his lack of backup. Cortana warns Chief that this is the shipmaster that ordered his fleet to follow the Pillar of Autumn from Reach. The Arbiter says that even with humanity's desperate attempt to distort their genes into something formidable, all it takes is one Covenant elite to strike down a Spartan, under the wrath of a single ship, to glass their entire planet. The Arbiter introduces them to the Hunters, then ascends back into his ship to leave them with the devastation to ensue, at the peril of the Hunters. From here, we get a short-lived but rigorous battle with Chief, Sergeant Johnson, and the Marines skirmishing against the 2 Hunters, with some additional elites. Johnson takes down some of the elites with a sniper rifle. Meanwhile, Chief takes on 2 Hunters head-on. He utilises his combat ingenuity and dexterity to eliminate both the Hunters. He doesn't make it look easy, just proficient. Also, quick side note, maybe let's not have the Hunters have a massive gaping weak spot in the back of their armour, like in the game. It would be a bit anticlimactic if Chief just boop, pistol whipped them in the back. Or sniper rifle whipped them in the back. I'm trying my best to have what I say match up to what's on screen, so shut up. When that's over, they waste no time and ascend into the ship with immediacy. Before they gain entry, however, the Arbiter and his zealots abscond from the ship in Banshees to go elsewhere on the Halo Ring. When his zealots question his choice to leave Keyes behind, he asserts that the heretics will not matter if they find what they're looking for on this relic. They have matters to attend to. Master Chief obliterates his way through the Covenant to get to the prison cells where Keyes is being held. Once Chief has rescued Keyes, this is where we get a change of pace in the story, and the plot moves forward into new territory. This is where we begin to delve into the ethos of the Halo Ring, particularly Installation 4, the ring they currently stand on. Keyes points out that the amount of forces present on this ship is demonstrably scarce, as if they are spread out too thin. On Reach, each of these warships housed thousands of troops, begging the question of where they are now. It's insinuated to Master Chief that something doesn't feel right. From their coincidental slip-space jump to the Halo Ring, to the Covenant's apparent vested interest and occupancy with what they call the relic. Then Cortana's voice emanates from Master Chief's suit, for Keyes to hear. Cortana admits that the coordinates she sent to the Pillar of Autumn were not random. The coordinates were obtained from a Forerunner artifact in Dr. Halsey's possession. Cortana figured if they were to go anywhere, she thought why not here, in case they found something invaluable to the war effort against the Covenant. Keyes questions if they did. Cortana gets Chief to hook her up to the ship's Battle.net mainframe, so she can gather intelligence on what the Covenant know of the Halo. Cortana then divulges that, in accordance with the Covenant's prophecy on the Halo Rings, they believe it to contain some form of weapon. Keyes echoes what the Arbiter said to him: extinction is merciful when done fast. Chief tells Keyes that the Arbiter seemed evasive, as if he has other priorities. Keyes reckons that the Arbiter has abandoned the ship in search of Halo's weapon with the rest of the Covenant. Cortana eventually states that she has deciphered messages regarding Covenant search and excavation teams all around the Halo. Cortana then triangulates the location of 2 Covenant excavation sites. Points of intrigue the Covenant found via a seismic scan. The first is where the control center for Installation 4 will turn out to be. This is located in a winterized snow biome on the Halo, where there is a Forerunner underground circuit of abandoned, age-old structures. The second excavation site is in a swamp, woodland-type environment, with deep fissures and ravines. There resides another piece of mysterious Forerunner architecture that would appear to be a weapons cache. As it turns out in the game, however, this is where the parasitic flood infestation is being contained in stasis. Due to the fact that the Covenant could find the Halo's control panel at any minute, they need to make haste in making a decision, and because time is not on their side, they decide to divide their forces. Master Chief and Cortana expedite the excavation site in the snow biomes of the Halo, whilst Keyes elects to lead and head to the Forerunner storage facility in the swamps, the weapons cache, backed up by multiple squads of Marines and Sergeant Johnson. This is an even divide, because after all, Master Chief is a one-man army. As great of a mission I think it is, for this film adaptation I am completely skipping the silent cartographer. As a level in a video game, it serves and fulfills the purpose of providing the player with a challenge, but in terms of story, nothing much really transpires, or at least not enough for a particular escapade of flying to an entirely new island, fighting the Covenant, searching an underground base, finding a map, and fighting the way back out to be picked up by Forehammer and a Pelican. I mean, sure, the map is how Master Chief finds the control center, allowing the plot to move forward, but I've simply made an adjustment to make the Covenant seismic scan to be systematically efficient to a degree where they have determined the most likely candidates for a room which the control center might be, in terms of complexity and most importantly, security of the Forerunner architecture. And since Cortana accumulates this information, the humans would therefore know where to go. Rest assured, this alteration will not dramatically change the sequence of events. It'll just help us get the plot moving along much faster and keep the story interesting, with less of a long-winded interval between each narrative revelation or inciting incident that leads to the next through cause and effect. Halo Combat Evolved story drags on a bit in favour of its gameplay elements, so as a film adaptation, this omission is absolutely necessary. Back to it. Forehammer flies the Pelican to the underground control room with Chief on board. In accordance with the game, Forehammer drops Chief deep into the Forerunner chasm that leads them to the tunnels to the Halo control center. But remember, Chief and Cortana do not know this at this point. Chief covertly takes on the Covenant troops who were guarding the entrance as he makes his way to the Halo control center. After that, we cut further into the tunnels, ahead of Master Chief near the control center. The Covenant are trying to scorch the Forerunner doors open one by one, as the tunnels we're on is in lockdown. As they make progress down the wide, spacious tunnels, an elite summons their enemy, the Arbiter, on a communication device. To clarify, the Arbiter is on the other end of the frequency, where he will eventually encounter the Flood. The elite on screen is a different one. This elite asks for an update on the other excavation process. Master Chief has reached them at this point. From a distance, he is taking cover behind a pillar, eavesdropping on the conversation, at which point we cut to the Arbiter, with his excavation team, in the Forerunner weapons cache. We intercut to the Arbiter on the other end of the frequency. He reports that they have found nothing yet. He tells the other elite on the other end to stay vigilant for the heretics, or Master Chief. In the swamps, Keyes and the Marines push forward and enter the structure. What follows is a firefight in an atrium-like area with a high ceiling. The Arbiter is alarmed and calls for his Zealot lieutenants to assist in the fight, leaving engineers behind to fight open the remaining door. Plasma and battle rifles are shot across the room, making for a blazing light show in the atrium. During the gunfight, the Covenant have managed to blast through the final door. This is when the Covenant accidentally awakens the Flood. This could happen in such a way where the Covenant's controlled demolition disturbs the foundation of the Forerunner structure, and therefore compromises the security and stability of the containment room that is storing and preserving the bacteria organism known as the Flood. Perhaps we could have a scene not unlike the overly curious and equally moronic scientists in Prometheus, but instead of toying with the organism, they are so enamoured with the organism that they assume it is purely a weapon just waiting to be used, further justifying it, as the Covenant are after all being attacked at this very moment. Due to that misinformation, however, they release it at their peril. Or we could even have a scene that includes the engineers from Halo 3 ODST. In this scene, we could introduce a faction of the Covenant that function as sort of a geneticist or scientific division for the Covenant. A species that specialises in intellect rather than combat. Hence, dealing with the weaponization of the Flood is thought to be their forte. Despite the mitigating circumstances of the Covenant releasing the Flood, during the firefight between the UNSC and the Covenant, the place goes dark, but faintly illuminated by the red emergency generated lighting. The facility goes into a Redcon 5 procedure and preserves all power and energy for the countermeasure, the Doom Protocol that will awaken the Oracle of Installation 4, the Monitor, 343, Guilty Spark, and his Sentinels. The darkness doesn't calm the rigorous fight for the control center, however, but what does is the screeching, the snarl of the Flood, echoing and circulating throughout the facility, a sound neither side has heard before. This strikes fear in both sides of the war, as everyone fearfully turns their heads to the origin of the horrific sound, including Captain Keyes, Sergeant Johnson, the Arbiter, Marines, Grunts, Jackals. Everyone's instincts kick in, and they stop fighting, even if it's for just a few minutes. With that suspense, we cut away. We don't see what happens, not yet. The elite on the other excavation site is distressed by the commotion he is hearing on the other end, until he loses the connection. We see that Chief was also listening the entire time. Moments later, whilst the elite is distracted and tense, a fragmentation grenade rolls to his feet with no pin. It's too late before he reacts. The elite and nearby grunts are eradicated in a glorious fashion. Although, Chief purposefully keeps the engineer alive. He reaches for his magnum to threaten the engineer, but realises he doesn't need to. The engineer seems to unseal the door regardless of his orders, insinuating it's a pacifist, a creature that isn't taking sides, but does have a harmless and shrouded agenda. The engineer succeeds, and Master Chief gains access to the control center. The engineer floats away after he's done. Chief approaches the control panel and connects Cortana to the neural network of the installation.
That terminal, try there.
You all right?
Never been better. You can't imagine the wealth of information. The knowledge, so much, so fast. It's glorious.
So, what sort of weapon is it?
Cortana garners all of the mass infusion of generational information about the Halo, the vast history of the universe and the cosmos, surrounding the Forerunner installation in one codex. Even for an artificial intelligence, this strains Cortana's processing power. Cortana is astonished by the magnitude of the intelligence, and what this means for the future war effort. Chief tells her to narrow her mind and find out what Halo's weapon is, and how they can use it to defeat the Covenant. Cortana calls him a barbarian for implying that Halo is nothing but a cudgel. Cortana, in admiration of the majesty and significance of the Halo, says that the Covenant are justified in creating a religion based on it. They were right. The Halo rings are Forerunner technology, artifacts to serve a purpose larger than life itself. Chief pries her to get to the point, asking how it will benefit them in the war, the current war. Cortana tells him that the Halo itself is a weapon. The Forerunners built the Halo as a countermeasure, a catalyst, a doomsday protocol to eliminate a threat, a parasite. Master Chief is bewildered.
Let's stay focused. Halo, how do we use it against the Covenant?
This ring isn't a cudgel, you barbarian. It's something else. Something much more important. The Covenant were right. This ring, It's Forerunner. Give me a second to access. Yes, the Forerunner built this place, what they called a fortress world, in order to... Wait. No, that can't be. Oh, those Covenant fools. They must have known. There must have been signs.
Slow down. You're losing me.
The Covenant found something. Buried in this ring. Something horrible. And now they're afraid.
Something buried. Where?
The captain. We've got to stop the captain.
Keys? What
The
do we...
weapons cache he's looking for. It's not really... We can't let him get inside.
I don't understand.
There's no time. Get out of here. Find keys. Stop him. Before it's too late.
Cortana turns hysterical. She orders Chief to abscond from the control room and get to the other excavation site in order to save Captain Keyes and the others as soon as possible. It may already be too late. The flood manifests and spreads dauntingly fast. Chief reaches for the Cortana chip to eject it from the control terminal. Cortana urgently tells him not to do that. She needs to learn more of the installation. She says she is only scratching the surface. She yells at him to go. Master Chief double takes, reluctant to leave her. She says they have no choice, and that he should let her do her job, what she was designed and programmed to do. Master Chief tentatively breaks off into a sprint. As Master Chief is scurrying down the tunnels as fast as his augmented agility will allow him, something catches him off guard. An unidentified object lurks behind Master Chief. With his acute senses, he notices it. He grabs his assault rifle, and then aims the barrel of his weapon to have it meet the Oracle. 343 Guilty Spark. Before Chief can pull the trigger, he is teleported into the swamp. He ends up in the dim, dusky swamplands. He gets his bearings, then averts to the monitor. 343 apologizes for the abrupt teleportation. He introduces himself as 343 Guilty Spark, monitor of Installation 04, then tells Chief that he requires his assistance for a grave predicament. Here I will end part 2. I'd just like to say that you've probably noticed it's getting harder for me to find visuals that reflect what happens in my adaptation as I stray further away from what happens in the video game. Granted, as a bigger picture, I'm still reasonably sticking to the plot, but most of the scenarios I'm explaining to you for adaptation never happen, so you'll just have to bear with me on that regard in this great journey. Thank you for watching, stay tuned for part 3, and I will see you next time. Until then, goodbye for now. See you later. Arrivederci. Au revoir.